Welcome everyone. This is What Schools Can Learn from Video Games, a presentation given at MACE 2011 over at the Alumni Center at Manhattan, Kansas State University. My name is Curtis Chandler, and I'm the Kansas 2011 Teacher of the Year. There's my email available. So let's start off this way. I want to start by saying I am not a gamer. I bring that up because a lot of people, when they hear me talk about video games and education, worry that this is what I spend all my time doing, and it's completely the opposite. I'm not a genius. I'm not a programmer. I haven't designed video games for very long. It's not what I consider my forte. I don't do much programming or anything. I would consider you to look up individuals who are geniuses, people like James G., who have done extensive work in the use of video games in education, like at Arizona State. Now this is one individual who's really been a pioneer as far as taking a good hard look at what it is that video games have to offer schools. Okay? As an educator, this is what I see. As educators, we see video games as powerfully motivating digital environments. That's why we take a close look at them. And we're starting to attempt to study video games in order to determine how the components of them might be integrated into instructional design. I want to take a look at what video games do that engages students and try and make my classroom look a little bit more like that. And that's where we're coming from. So here's the question. Why are young people willing to invest so much time and energy, especially resources, into video games? That's our real question. If you go and you interview young people, people have done extensive research in this, but if you were just to ask your students why they play video games and then take a look at the research, this is kind of the list that you'd come up with. Video games happen to be fun and immersive. They offer control and choice. There's a chance to show creativity, and there are multiple attempts to a solution or a problem. There's always clear movement toward a single goal or multiple goals. You're constantly giving feedback, and it involves movement. If you look especially at the latest game systems, Xbox has a motion-sensitive controller, as does PS3. Wii's been doing it for a while. And so this is why my students seem to take to video games so much. Now, what we're looking at is something like this. This is the hierarchy of how I say we could do this. At the very bottom, we can start by incorporating video game elements into our classrooms. We can take a look at what video games do for students and try and make our classes look a little bit like that. Level 2 would probably be to start to use simulations in video games to allow students to interact with the content. We're going to take a look at a game called Burger Tycoon and also look at one called Incredibots 2, which is a simulation which allows you to create multiple solutions to a single problem. And finally, we're going to take a look at some creation and sharing of video games. Think of Scratch, Storytelling Alice, Wii Game Studio. These are all software programs that students can use to start to learn to integrate the math, science, and logic that it takes to design their own video game. Now, if you take a look, classtools.net is the one we're going to take a quick look at. We're going to see where this might fall into the hierarchy. So here you go. Okay, here we go. ClassTools.net is set up like this. Free site for teachers. What we're going to do is we're going to click on one that says Arcade Game Generator right there. Okay? And what this allows us to do is just copy and paste our content from any content area and turn it into a quick, flashy video game. And I say flashy because they do run in Flash. All right, so here it is, loading up, nice and slow. Okay? So we've got any random title of a quiz here, and we're just going to copy and paste a study guide. So here we go. Here's a study guide. That's not it. That's my schedule. You want something else. All right, so here we go. Let's say we have a bunch of questions from any random subject area. You can just copy those and paste those right in here. And if you look, 5 plus 5 equals star 10. The way the computer knows how to turn it into a question is if you put a star between the question and the answer. What is the capital of Texas? Star Austin, and so on and so forth. Now if I hit play, it's going to ask me to, oops, you're supposed to have 10. So I'll just paste them again. And now we should be ready to play. Okay? And you can choose a variety of formats. Take WordShoot, for example. All it does is you shoot the correct answer. My students love this to review on the Promethean board. Click here to start. What are the smallest known elements that we know of called? We'll say subatomic particles. It blows up. What are the smallest known elements what we know called? Subatomic particles. Same question. 5 plus 5, 10, and so on and so forth. So the question becomes, let's close this out. Here's our question. Where does something like ClassTools.net fall? Is it students creating their own video games? Are we using simulations to let students explore and interact with content? Or just incorporating video game elements? Now, we get varied responses, but you have to understand that ClassTools.net, which is probably the most popular use of video games lately in education, is really somewhere at the bottom. All we're doing is taking our basic rote content and allowing students to play around with it a little bit more. That puts it somewhere at the bottom. It's a fun way to do some quick review, but other than that, we're really not getting to the upper levels of learning that are available through video games. So here we go. If we take a look at the bottom, incorporating video game elements into classroom learning, we're going to take a look at how each of these, or at least most of these, considering how much time we have, and see what a classroom could do to make it more fun and immersive, offer students control. It lets students use creativity and make multiple attempts, how they can make movements towards goals, provide some feedback, and also engage students in some movement. So here we go. Let's talk about the first one, fun and immersive. Walked into a class and a teacher was getting ready to teach the connection between Rasputin and the Romanov family. Not super exciting stuff. And so the challenge becomes, how can I make this more fun and immersive, specifically immersive in media, to get the students making connections and having fun? And this is what this teacher did. She had this game from Wii called Just Dance 2 loaded up as the students walked in. Turn the volume down a little bit. Now what happens is the students came in and a couple started dancing around. She started dancing with them. By the time the bell rang, everybody was dancing. And then they started to look closely at the lyrics that come up on this song off of the Wii. And that's how they introduced the connection between Rasputin and the Romanov family, because this song is actually called Rasputin and loosely goes through the history of this individual and what he did for his brief time in the history of the rise of the USSR. Okay, so what do you think? Fun and immersive? A lot more so than most activities that we provide for our students. The game system is Wii, and the name of the game is Just Dance 2. Another thing we can do is we can start to offer more control and choice. That's what video games provide. Walked into a classroom, and the first assignment of the year was for the students to choose one of these emerging technologies. On the right, you have something called iFly. Let's see if I can find my mouse here. Lost it. iFly, which is a stationary skydiving chamber, and this over here is what we call a flow rider, a stationary wave. And as they walked into the room, both of these videos were playing, and this teacher said, look, you're going to do the exact same amount of reading, responding, and writing. I don't care which of these that you choose. It's going to be the exact same project, but I want you to pick the one that most interests you. And so they had to do some reading, responding, and writing to each of these technologies, but they got to choose each one. So either way, they met the objectives of the assignment, but she gave them the choice between which one they wanted to do. Another way you can offer control and choice is just by allowing students to demonstrate a mastery of content in different ways. So in my class, these were the options I had set up, these two right here. They could do a little fun retelling of one of the chapters in Treasure Island, using some puppets and some pictures with funny voices, or they could do a scrapbook of one of the characters. Didn't bother me which one they chose. But I also had it open where I told the students, if you can come up with another way to do this project, to summarize the most important content of a couple chapters and do it in a fun, creative way, I would love that. And so I had a student who wanted to do an animation. This is his animation. And another student who just wanted to do a diorama and then film it. And that's offering control and choice. As long as the objective is there, and their project allows them to get to that objective, all it takes is a teacher to sit down and say, yeah, that's a great idea that you have. Let's see if we can make it work for the project. So again, that's one way that we can offer control and choice, by providing opportunities for them to choose what they want to do, but also opening it up with them so they can say, hey, I have an idea. Can I try it this way? And whenever a student asks me that, I think the answer is always, yes, let's see what we can do. Now let's see if we can make it work for the objectives. Okay. Another thing we said that video games offer is creativity and multiple attempts to solutions or a problem. Now, this is a friend of mine, Nikki. She's a science teacher and a very talented one. And what she does is she creates these assignments where she teaches the content that they need to know. In this case, it was dealing with the law of physics. And then she gives them a challenge that has multiple solutions. She says, these are the materials. You can only use the materials in class or what you can find at home. But the rules are this. At the end of 2 days, we're going to see if you can use the balloon to power this car from here to there to the other side of the room. And we'll have 2 prizes. The car that travels the fastest will get a prize, but we'll also take them in the commons area, and the car that travels the furthest will also get a prize. And what Nikki said is she loves to set up these challenges because students have to learn how to think critically. They have to use limited materials to solve problems. And so here's some pretty good ones that she shared with us. This one was very simplistic but very effective. This is a student who she said doesn't do much in school but took this project home and worked like crazy. This is kind of a bizarre design she wasn't ready for, but it worked very well. This is the one that actually won because the student looked closely at the rules and said, "You said that the balloon-powered car only has to be powered by the balloon, but that doesn't mean I have to inflate it." So what he did is he pulled the bottom of the balloon back, attached the balloon to the bottom and pulled it back and snapped it like a slingshot, and as a result, his went quite a bit further than anybody else's. How do I stop my screencast? That's the question. There it is. All right, sorry. All right, sorry about that, folks. We had a little technical problem. No big deal. Next element that we can build into our classrooms from video games is incorporating clear movement towards goals and feedback. And a lot of this can be done just with outlining the course objectives, feedback as far as these interactive response systems we can bring in the classroom, or any system we can set up with students that encourages all of them to participate. I think I'll breeze through those, and what I'd really like to talk more about is movement, how we can get students moving around. We know that research shows that to get the blood flowing, to get their brains functioning again, we need to have them moving around and participating. So here's an example of a teacher who had a very, very long list of terms he needed to teach to his students, and as a result created this little fun activity for them to get into it and taught it to them. Ready? So here's an example of a teacher who said, I have all this content I need to teach. How can I teach it to them very quickly and efficiently? And so what he did is he worked with them to create a song where they act out each of the words, have these little motions that go with them, and they're able to move very quickly through several words. So there's an example of people adding movement. All right, again, we're just looking at the bottom at this point. How do we make our classrooms look a little bit more like video games and using these elements that make games fun? What we really want to get to is at least level 2, which is using simulations to allow students to interact with the content and getting them to explore multiple solutions to a problem. So here's an example. We could just start by Googling something like science simulations or social studies simulations, and you will get hundreds, depending on the content area, thousands of activities. Now the problem is you're kind of limited to what it is that your content is. You have to match it up with the content, but every now and then you get lucky. Give an example. We were reading a book called Chew on This by Eric Schlosser, which takes a look at the fast food industry. It looks at the agricultural section, the slaughterhouses, the fast food restaurant itself, and even what goes on from a corporate standpoint. And we had a student that came up and said, hey, this is kind of like this game I play. And we looked at it, and sure enough, a lot of it mirrors the book. So we found a chance in class to go ahead and walk them through this. So we'll give you a little example of this. Again, the name of the book that we were using was the name of the book was Chew on This, and the game is Burger Tycoon. So here you go. This is how it works. You have the agricultural section right here. You have the slaughterhouse. You have the restaurant itself, and then you have corporate headquarters. There's a strategy that goes with this, and you're trying out different things. So you can see how, sorry, real quick, if we add several cows here, put some farmland in, we're developing our own agriculture here, and how that translates into the slaughterhouse. Now you have to keep the cows fed. You can add things to cheapen up the food, hormones, and so on and so forth, industrial waste. Let's say that a cow gets sick. You can actually have them killed. Notice the hamburgers that are coming out. Fast food restaurant is not going to work unless you hire employees, right? Got to keep the food moving. Every now and then you can fire an employee or scold them or something like that. Okay? Then, of course, corporate headquarters. And here you could do things such as launch a campaign. And what that does is actually gets advertising going. And so you can see that all these levels are working the same, and that matched up very, very clearly. Sorry, I've turned the volume down. That matched up really, really closely with what we were studying in the book. And then we did some compare and contrast activities between the book content and what we see represented in the video game. So to tell you the truth, what we did was we really just got lucky with that. Just so happens there's a simulation that matches our content. But again, we're looking at how to use simulations to allow students to interact. You can always just Google science simulations, social studies simulations, and see which ones will better match up with your content. Or you could take it the opposite approach. If you have a simulation that's really going to be effective, why not start to build some of the content around that? Okay? Another thing we can do is we can look at multiple solutions to a single problem, like in Incredibots. And Incredibots is the one we're going to look at right now. Let's close out Burger Tycoon. All right, this is Incredibots 2. And this is how it works. What they do is they provide you a challenge, and there could be multiple ways to go there. Let's do a very basic one. Underneath tutorials, we're going to go to jump bot. Okay? It says for this jump bot to clear this gap, so there's your challenge, you're going to need a piston to help it jump. And they do offer some suggestions. So here you go. If we do it right now, I'm going to hit play and show you what happens. We want this jump bot to be able to jump over it, right? Not going to happen. So what we need to do is do something that makes it so it's more equipped to do so. So you can do things like change the density by clicking on here. I'm going to make it less dense and therefore lighter. I can click on the motor and this wheel right here, and I can put that motor way up, make it stronger. But ultimately, all those things aren't going to be enough. So here we go. Try it again. So that's not going to work. What we need to do is do something that it actually suggested, and that is to put a sliding joint on it that's going to work as a piston. So what we're going to do is we're going to attach a sliding joint to it and then enable that motor. Okay? We're going to turn the piston way up to give it a little bit more strength, maybe even speed it up a little bit and see if that'll give us enough oomph to get over it. Okay, let's see if it works. Hit play. There you go, and we jumped it. Now, what's the purpose of something like this? Well, Incredibots represents a whole generation of simulations that have been designed specifically to not limit kids to what they have lying around the house. This is a virtual sandbox where your materials, for the most part, are unlimited. So imagine providing a challenge. I need you to jump from here to here using only 5 pieces. Then you're creating situations under which students have to be creative, and they can develop multiple solutions to the same problem. And ultimately, that's a pretty good thing for kids to do in schools, and quite different than what we usually have them do. Okay? So again, we've gone from just incorporating video game elements to using simulations like Burger Tycoon and Incredibots to let them interact with content and explore multiple solutions to problems. And now we're going to go on to the next one, which is my favorite part, creating and sharing of video games, having students be involved in this. And here are 3 ones that you should probably look into. Scratch, free download. Storytelling Alice, free download. Wii Game Studio, free, but the upgrade is probably worth it. And what all these allow young people to do is to design and share their own video games. And we're going to use the one that I'm most familiar with, the one that I use with my students in a very short exploratory course that we do with grades 6 through 8. And here we go. Okay? What this is find mine. All right. This is being able to look at the game and see the parts working at the same time. So what I'm going to do real quick is I'm just going to hit play on this very, very basic Pac-Man game. I'm going to turn the volume down. Now watch. As I hit left, you'll see something light up right over here. When I hit left, this is going to light up. When I hit right, this will light up. And so on and so forth. Okay? And that's how you can tell what's being controlled. Down, up. And so as you watch here, you can see what it is that's in motion. So imagine being able to see the parts of the video game and then customize it from there. What I do is I provide my students with a challenge. I say, hey, this is kind of boring. This would be a lot better if he could speed up quite a bit. Let's see if you can figure that out in the next 5 minutes. So they start to look at it, start to mess with these. And they come down here and say, oh, look, move 2 steps. I wonder if I sped that up to like 7, if he'd move any faster. And sure enough, now we've got a much faster game. And when he hits the red, watch what's going to happen. Change his level. So then we say, all right, can you add a very, very cool level, a brand new one that would be a little bit trickier. Let's see what you can come up with. See if you can make it where one spot would be mud and another spot would be ice. And that's what they do, is they go in and they paint something like this. Let's edit this one. We're going to add in some ice. I think I'll actually change the color of that naturally. There you go. Okay. And then I'll also add in some mud here. And we're just doing this really, really quick. Okay. Now what does that do? All we did was add another level with some ice and mud. Say, okay, let's see if you can figure out how it is that you can make that so it slows them down in the mud and makes it faster in the ice. We have 5 minutes to figure that out, see what they can do. And whenever anybody figures it out, we say, all right, go over and check over what they've done. Now in this case, I'll show you what they usually come up with. Is they end up duplicating this one right here. And duplicating this one. And again, there are multiple ways to do this. What they figure out, though, is right in front of Pac-Man is this teeny tiny purple dot. And when it's on green, he will move 7 steps at a time. So what we do is if we change this green to the ice, we want him to go faster. So we'll make that like 14. And if his purple dot is touching brown, we're going to make him go very, very slow, 1 step. And then you hit green and this is what happens. It goes really slow, regular speed, fast, slow. And we teach them to modify and customize games based on these mini challenges. Again, there are multiple solutions to a problem, and they end up coming up with different ways. And so there's an example of how free software can be used with students to help them design and create their own video games. What I really like about these, especially Scratch, is you're able to upload them to the Scratch forum, and students can download those and remix them. They can offer comments as suggestions. You can go and find other people's scripts that they've already developed, and you can begin to use different people's tools and templates to make your own better. And so, to me, it really envisions what we're trying to get them to do, which is use their own creativity, create multiple solutions to problems, and to get them designing video games rather than just playing them. Skip this slide real quick. What we usually do is we have folks type in and say, what other uses have you seen or heard of for video games in education? And that's probably the question we'll leave you with, is you've heard things, you've seen things. There are other uses, many of them talked about by individuals such as James G., ways that we can incorporate video game elements and video games themselves into classrooms. I want to remind you that I am not a gamer. I'm a language arts teacher. I'm not a genius. What I'm trying to do is to look closely. What is it about video games that engages our students? What can my class do to better mirror that? Ultimately, how can we take them to all the levels? We can start by incorporating video game elements in our classrooms, but we need to move into the higher levels, which is use these simulations to allow our students to explore, to interact, and to problem solve. And ultimately, where we want to get them is teaching them that they learn so much more from being creators than just consumers of video games. And use programs like Scratch, Storytelling Alice, We Game Studio, and these other ones to really figure out what it is that they really truly can do with video games. The end.